She who thrives. Phoenix rising. The true me. The ups and downs crazy in life. So take this journey with me. She who thrives. Yeah. Good morning, sunshines, and welcome to She Who Thrives, a podcast about women who have faced different adversities in life and have overcome and become successful in their own right. And today I'm very excited. I have a new guest. She's new to me too. I know her. She's part of my IT world. But we've never sat down and actually spoke one-on-one personally. So I'm very excited because I'm so intrigued. I'm going to be nosy today.
That's okay.
Melina Kay.
Hi.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I was like, when Anthony told me, Anthony is her boyfriend.
Yes.
When Anthony told me you wanted to be on the podcast, I was like, oh my God, I'm doing something right. People want to get on here. So I was excited about it. I was like, yeah. But he did tell me on the launch. So we did have a launch party on November 7th, which was my birthday. So
happy belated.
Thank you. And he was just like, yeah, she wants to get on. I was like, okay, so tell me about her. And I was like running around, so I couldn't really, talk about anything. And then you and I were texting a few days ago, but my brain has been all over the place.
That's
so
okay.
we haven't sat down and talked about
like
it.
That. It's like that.
Yeah, I'm going through a rebrand and I'm hiring new people. So it's just like, you guys know.
Oh yeah. We do too, for sure.
And you guys been dealing with my laptops and all that stuff or whatever.
Yeah, and other clients. So I get it.
Yeah.
It's a lot to juggle.
So tell me about yourself.
So I'll leave that just to the side because that's his baby, his cup of tea. But so in addition to that, I am an actress. I actually have a Cliff Bar commercial that's running right now. So if you ever see a girl boxing, Cliff Bar, like the
Cliff Bar?
Yeah, like the
really?
little energy bars. Yeah.
Oh wait, we gotta look that up.
If you see a girl in an orange tank top boxing, that's me.
Cliff Bar. Okay, hold on. I gotta look this up. You can keep on talking, but I'm gonna look this up.
It's so funny because people I keep getting messages. I think I filmed it right after COVID. So I think 2020 or 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And people are now seeing it and they're like, oh, were you in a commercial? I'm like, yeah, I was. So it's hilarious.
I have to see this. I'm looking forward to see if I can.
But yeah, so I've done that. I have an independent film that's on Amazon Prime. It's called Unsheltered. It's like a campy horror film. 5 students go missing. So it's cool. I'm one of the students in it. Yeah.
No, I don't know what that is.
No, I think that was it. Because I heard the little
It's a Cliff Bar commercial.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's yours. It's tennis.
They have, it depends. They have different spots. So there's one that's just me, apparently. My mom was like, oh, I found your commercial. There's one just you. And she sent it. And then there's one.
We got to look for it.
That's okay. I'll send it later.
Okay, cool.
But it's funny because people are like, were you in a commercial? And they're just randomly messaging me, people from high school or whatever.
Oh, that's cool. Funny. So how long have you been doing that work, acting?
It's funny. I would say professionally within the past 5-7 years, but I got into it in high school. I grew up singing, dancing. And, but I don't know, I was always in sports. My mom always put me in martial arts, just whatever she could put me in. And then in high school, I decided that's when I really wanted to explore performing. It was something I always liked to do. And I just fell in love with it ever since and can't stop.
So did you ever see yourself as a performer growing up when you were little? Because you know how usually you speak to or you hear or you see interviews that they were like, oh, I always was a singer. I was always so dramatic.
There was always interest, always. Mm-hmm. But again, my mom's from the Philippines. So she's the one person that doesn't like karaoke or it's just not her cup of tea. So
Gotcha.
And I would sing around the house. So I felt like the oddball being creative and
artistic.
So
you were performing.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was singing around the house. She's like, why don't you sing in choir? But it was church choir. So Catholic mass is very
oh my God.
No offense, it just puts me to sleep. As a kid,
it's very
I was
monotone.
Okay. Oh, okay, communion.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
Are you
I've
a-
always had an interest for sure.
Are you originally from Florida?
Yes, born and
Yeah.
raised in Orlando.
Get out. I usually
Yeah.
don't meet anybody
I
born and raised
know.
here.
Yeah, most people are like, oh yeah, they come from wherever.
So your mom's from the Philippines and your dad?
He is from Chicago, but his background, he's just
Yay,
white
Chicago.
American. I think we have European ancestry in there, so I'm just a mutt.
So do you still have family in Chicago, or?
Yeah, I do.
Is
One
that
of
why
my-
you guys were in Chicago recently, wasn't it?
I was for my cousin's bachelorette party, which now she's pregnant already.
Oh,
It was
wow.
quick. Yeah, it was quick. I was like, wow, you got pregnant quick. And she's like, yeah, I did.
Oh, wow.
It was so funny.
So growing up in Orlando, how was that for you? Because I've never met anyone that actually is from here.
I'll say interesting. So for me, like, I will say a lot of my childhood, I just felt confused because I was mixed. And so I didn't quote unquote look Filipino. And so when I did go to a Filipino church, they're like, oh, but you're only half, whatever. So it was kind of like that mentality. And then when I was around, I don't know, American, whatever, I guess you could say white, like it was like, oh, what are you? So I felt very, very not comfortable in my skin as a kid because I don't know, it was different. And there weren't.
So you're not good enough to be Filipina, but you're not good enough to be American. I think that happens to a lot of us.
It does.
I was born and raised here, but my parents are from Puerto Rico. So when I go back to Puerto Rico, oh, she's American, but then I'm here, like she's Hispanic or whatever.
Yeah,
because they won't say Puerto Rican. So it's like I'm not American enough, but I'm not Puerto Rican enough.
Oh,
so I'm
yeah.
like in that middle.
That was
so
like
it's
the
hard.
struggle of my life, and especially being mixed because I just look like me.
Yeah.
And like genetics, you know, you never know.
Yeah.
So like a lot of people even today, they're like, "Oh, but you don't look Filipino." I'm like, "Well, I am."
I didn't know you were either.
Yeah, I know.
But I have quite a few that have married into a family, so a lot of them, they look Hispanic too. So
They do, yeah, for sure.
My cousin is Puerto Rican and Mexican, and he looks like he's Filipino.
Yeah, well, I have a family friend. Her last name's Gonzalez, but full Filipino.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So, I mean, Spain did colonize Philippines
Yeah,
for a long
yeah.
time, so that's why we have so many. But it's nice to have the similarities too,
Mhm.
because even like in Anthony's family, they're mainly Puerto Rican and Cuban, but they identify more Puerto Rican and just feel more at home there. There's a lot of similarities, which are really neat to like learn, and it's just fun. It's nice that there's similarity in both cultures.
So are you very do you like all of the Filipino food?
Oh yeah,
I love it too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I will.
It's
be
like a big buffet all the time too,
Oh yeah,
right?
I'm a little Americanized when it comes to balut, which is like the it's like the egg embryo. It's like that I'm like, all right, I'll be Americanized for that. But other than that,
like, I'm American.
Yeah, like that, I'm Filipino American, so I'll own that. But
Did you have to deal with any? I know you said it's kind of confusing, but did you have to deal with any like bullying because of it?
it was like from both sides, honestly.
Really?
Because yeah, like even like when I went to like my Filipino church, like I love them, don't get me wrong, but I think just growing up, sometimes you watch what people say and sometimes it comes across the wrong way. So yeah, like there was another girl who was also mixed, and we were the two mixed girls in the church, and she would always just have a competition, like who got the better grades, who's prettier. And I was like, really? Like, I'm just trying to do my own thing here.
Right.
Like, I'm not about that life. But so it was a little bit of that, or like, oh, you're only half, which doesn't, like, for me or just other mixed kids I've seen, like, it does kind of diminish you just saying, like, oh, you're only half. And it took a while for me to understand, like, no, I'm a full person.
Right.
Yes, I might be half of my ethnicity, but, like, just because you're saying that and that's the tone doesn't mean, like, I'm less of a person.
Right. Becky G, I seen this. Becky G says she's a
yeah.
200%er.
Yeah.
She says, I'm 100% American and I'm 100%
I like that.
Mexican.
200. All right, I'm 200% now.
Yeah, so she says she deals with that a lot because her
Yeah.
cousin's like, oh, she's not Mexican enough. But, you know, she deals with the same issues.
Yeah.
So yeah, she says that she's the 200%er.
I like that. I like that. I'm gonna steal that from her. All right, 200%.
Right. So because of all of that,
That's
did you feel like
awesome.
you had to like prove yourself more?
Oh
to
yeah,
people?
definitely. Especially I felt in the Filipino community since I don't look it. But it's funny because I do sing and I love karaoke. So I usually go like, oh, you want me to prove it? All right, give me a mic. I got you.
I watch a lot of Joe Coy, and
Oh,
he
yeah.
talks
Oh, yeah.
about everyone
Yeah.
having to be a nurse.
Oh, yeah.
Did they
That's
expect
real.
for you?
I will say my mom was like, she was great in the sense of like, just go to college, get your degree. I don't care what it's in,
Mhm.
just get it done.
Mhm.
And so that's what I did. But yeah, a lot of my friends are nurses, like growing up. It's so true.
That is funny because that's a stereotype, but I see that it's like, oh my God,
But they're
but even the
around.
men too, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I have a Filipino male friend that's a traveling nurse. Like he's living life and having a good time.
oh wow, that's funny.
Yeah.
um, so getting into acting, I know a lot of people when they're going through certain things, acting has been their outlet.
Oh yeah,
Do you think
definitely.
that it can resonate from having to prove yourself and
Oh
then going
yeah.
into acting and arts and performing?
Yeah, I would say originally I felt a lot of pressure being first generation American, and there's not very many Filipino actors out there. There's some and there's more, but there's still very little. Like when you think
Mhm.
of Filipino celebrities that are actors, you don't really hear of anyone or like maybe a handful of people.
Mhm.
So when I first got into it, I did put a lot of pressure on myself, just that first generation mentality of like, well, your parents sacrificed so much and your lolo and lola, which are my grandparents. So, like, you have to succeed. You have to succeed for them, which I now know is the wrong mindset to go into
Mhm.
that. Granted, of course, like they fuel me as part of like my story and how I get here. But I've just changed my mindset to more where I'm honored to do this. I'm honored to represent them and represent my culture
Mhm.
of what I do. But it's definitely an outlet. Like there's been some times in my life where and especially growing up as a kid, I pretty much didn't know my parents together. Like they separated when I was 2.5. So I always went back and forth. So I think the mix of going back and forth and feeling like you didn't have a voice or a say in anything,
Mhm.
because there was custody battles and stuff like that too. So I just remember being a child like feeling kind of helpless and like even though I had a voice, like it wasn't heard or
Yeah.
like it didn't matter. But now that I'm older and I've done the emotional work through whether therapy or even sometimes through different scenes or monologues that I do, like artist therapeutic, like hands down. I think everyone should take an acting class
I want to
regardless.
take an acting
Yes,
class.
regardless whether you want to do it or not, like
Uh-huh.
just to get yourself out of your comfort zone because you'd be so surprised like what you're capable of just in these like silly little exercises.
I want to do
Um
that. Where do you go? I want to go.
so yeah, there's two places I've been to. There's actually several here. If you want to get started, I started at a Melee acting school. They've been around for a long time,
Mhm.
but there's so many good classes here in schools. There's Melee, there's Class Act, there's Book from Tape. They're all great studios, and I would recommend too, like seeing if you really want to pursue it, like going to more than one because everyone's got an opinion on
Mhm.
something, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's just how life is too. So there might be a director who works one way or a
Yeah.
casting director who works another way. So it's just nice to diversify yourself
Mhm.
with like different methods of teaching too. And then you just take what resonates for you and yeah,
I I'm the type of person that likes to try everything
same.
for the first time.
Same.
And that's why I did the podcast. I was just like, I'm gonna get out of my comfort zone.
Yes,
So I'm constantly trying
exactly.
to find different ways to get out of my comfort zone. And I haven't done the acting yet, but I really wanna try that because I worked for a performing arts theater for a while, for
Oh,
about two
nice.
years.
Okay.
They used to be called Orlando Rep.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So
yeah,
now it's the Orlando
yeah. Yeah.
Family Stage, I think
Oh,
they
now that
changed
okay,
it
now
to.
that's what they rebranded.
I think that's what they
Nice.
rebranded to. I should look it up so that they won't kill me, but
Nice.
like, Janelle, you didn't
Yeah,
get it
right.
right.
I know. Yeah.
So
I
I think it's
mean,
Orlando Family Stage.
I
Let me
think
just make
so.
sure
Yeah, but the
because.
Rep, the Shakes, I've done shows there. Like it's phenomenal. I like the theater scene here is very welcoming.
Hmm.
And there's a lot going on, which is awesome. Theme
Yeah.
parks, just everything. It's
Yeah, so
nice.
it's Orlando Family Stage. They used to be called Orlando Repertory Theater, and that's when I was with them. I was
Nice.
with them
That's
for about two
awesome.
years.
Oh, that's
So when I
awesome.
was going through certain things in my marriage, at that time I was married, and I was
Yeah.
going through certain things, I would tell my boss, "I'm gonna go hide." And he's like, okay. And there was a show going on. So I would sit all the way in the back and just watch the show and just
escape.
Yeah. So I loved it. I never dared to do it. I'll sit in on auditions to see how the auditions were going and stuff.
And those are always if you go in with the right mindset, it's good. But if you don't go in with the right mindset, there's so
but I was watching everybody else doing auditions, not me.
I know. I'm just saying, like, from the other side as a performer, because you see all these people staring at you, and you're like, okay.
And all of these, I liked going through headshots and reading bios and stuff like that. Yeah. So I loved it, but I never did that. I don't know why I never did it.
Do improv, which SAC is right up the street. And I've done classes there too. And it's phenomenal because you just get used to saying like yes and. Yeah. Like, because I think a lot of the times in our society, no is like really easy to say. So when you get in a class, it gets you out of like, okay, I can't say no. Yeah, this is absurd, but we're going to keep going with this. And you surprise yourself. It's so much fun.
I want to do that.
You should. It's so much fun. I highly
looking
recommend
back
it.
at the podcast, I've been noticing I say a lot. And I was like, oh my God, Janelle, you need to stop. So right now I'm trying not to say but I'm going to count myself. I'm going to count each one to see how I improve.
And sometimes I think it's reverse psychology. If you focus, I'm not going to say this, you're going to say it because you're focusing on it. So
I don't know. I haven't counted any besides the two that I just finished saying. But I did this. I don't know if you know what Toastmasters.
Yes, I went a couple of times too. Yeah.
I did a few times. It was kind of intimidating.
A little bit.
So it was intimidating, but you have to try to stay away from fillers. So I had to get back to that. I'm like, okay, how did you do it? But I think I might just take some more of that too.
That's helpful too, honestly. Like anything to get you out of your comfort zone will help you in the long run.
I think too, when you're talking in this setting, I just said it. In this setting.
It's easy to be like.
It's hard because I'm trying to be careful with what I'm saying at times. True. So I'm thinking and then it just comes out. And it's just like, all right. But really going back and watching the episodes, it's like, I said it again. And I'm about to start and just tallying it and see how many. Because if it's annoying me, I can imagine how many people it's annoying.
But you'd be surprised. I think especially like for me being a performer, and I think a lot of us, we all have our isms, like things we do that's unique to us. And sometimes, you need to work on it. But then sometimes it makes you uniquely you. I know the that's fair. Yeah. That's valid. But certain things you say, like, that's kind of your superpower. And I've just learned now, especially, like, just given my life experiences and just finding your own way, like, you are your superpower. Yeah. Even if you feel like you're your weakness, it's not. Like, at the end of the day, if you keep working on yourself and just getting, like, 1% better every day, you get there, and you get more comfortable.
It's intimidating because you know how you say you're not good enough because you're not American enough and not Puerto Rican enough. I mean, a Filipina. So it for me it was, I wasn't good enough for the Americans and I wasn't good enough because being Latina, Puerto Rican, back then I didn't want to speak. Like, I understand Spanish completely. Yeah. I speak it, but I didn't want to speak it because they changed my language when I was about 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
So when they changed it, it was like a tongue twister. And there were certain words they still only said in Spanish. Yeah. And people didn't understand it. And I thought everybody spoke Spanish. I really did. Yeah. So then when all of that happened, when I started getting made fun of with certain things, or if I said like a word wrong in Spanish, that my grandfather would just mess with me or whatever. So then I was very self-cautious with it. And then I started like, I don't want to, I started shying away, kind of like retreating into myself.
Yeah, definitely.
So like with performing and putting attention onto myself, it's like so nerve-wracking, and I start getting sweaty and I'm nervous.
It can be. I think what I do like about acting is the psychology behind it. Because you wouldn't think of it as psychology, but it is, because you get a script, you get a character, so you get these words that they're saying, and you kind of have to dissect, like, all right, what's going on here? Like, what's the situation? Who am I? What's my age? What's my life like? So it even takes you out of yourself too, which is nice. But then you also find like either differences or similarities to a character. It's funny, like and now I said But the movie I said that's on Amazon Prime, I thought it was very different for me at the time because at the time I was always being cast as like a love interest or like an innocent ingenue, whatever. And then for the movie, I was like life of the party, like what's up?
What was this? What's the movie called?
It's called Unsheltered, and it was funny because my
Unsheltered.
character was Puerto Rican.
Oh my God. But do you get that you look Latina?
Oh yeah, all the time. And hey, it's a compliment. Like, hey, I'll take it. But I'm still very proud, of course, being Filipino too. And like, yeah, well, Filipino looks like this too. Like when I started saying that when people were like, oh, but you don't look Filipino. I'm like, well, we look like this too. We look like anything really. Because it was such a melting pot of different cultures, like not only our own, but then Spain came over, and just a lot of people through Asia or just in general travel from Philippines. So we're just a melting pot, which is really nice and what's the word?
Joe Coy. I
Refreshing,
have
yeah.
to go back to Joe
No,
Coy
it's
because
okay.
I swear to God, he comes up with these things and he says the Filipinos are the Mexicans of Asia.
But it's true. It's true. It really
I was
is.
just like, really?
Well, because we're usually the darkest, like, especially, I mean, because I'm half white, like, I'm lighter, but my mom is she's brown. She's a brown Filipino woman. And I remember, like, growing up, she was my superhero. So I was like, why don't I look like that? Like, why isn't my skin like this? And I just grew up loving it, too. And, like, in a lot of cultures, too, especially a lot of Asian cultures, but like Philippines, they have whitening lotions to like, be lighter.
I've heard that. Yeah. I worked with someone from Nigeria and she said they had it's like the bleaching cream.
Yeah, it's so sad.
But she was very dark, but her skin was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would you do that to yourself?
I know, why would you do that?
And she's like, well, you had the lighter, the better.
Yeah.
Like, really?
And it's such an old school mentality. And I think it's slowly getting away from that.
Yeah.
But I just remember even my mom facing that. And even though I didn't go through that personally, just seeing her, even as a kid and the way people, like being a woman and being a minority and having an accent, she kind of raised us a lot to cover our, like if we did have an accent or that we didn't have one, because it was predominantly Caucasian here. Yeah. So she's like, hey, if you hide it, like you might get a little better in life, basically.
I think that's also back then the first generation mentality, because
it is.
My mom, she had that mentality. She didn't want me to stay speaking Spanish because she didn't want me to go through what she went through when she came to the States.
Yeah, and I know a little bit of Tagalog, but it's not a lot and like conversational. But I think she kind of did, like she taught us, and then I was, I guess, being a brat as a kid, like, no. Yeah. But kids are kids. But then I did grow to learn it. I'm not super conversational, but I know enough. And there weren't very many Filipinos around.
My mom says, is it a large community here?
Now there is, but I think where we lived there wasn't. So my mom just had her best friend, and that was it. And so it was very rare to see anything Filipino around too. So now in the Mills District, there's Sampaguita and Kaya, which wasn't there before. So I feel like a lot too. I follow a lot of like Filipino pages, and I think we're all coming to this like, no, we're here, and like. I remember kids growing up, I'm like, oh, I'm Filipino. They're like, what's that? And like people just didn't know what it was. So it's taken a while and a lot of like unlearning, conditioning, just how you were raised. But yeah, I'm very proud of like who I am, where I come from. And I'm more in touch with like being mixed, and that's okay, because for so long you're told like, oh, you're basically not enough, or you're not whatever enough. But that's, again, your superpower, and to embrace it instead of like fleeing away from it.
Nice. So what was your very first performing arts gig?
Okay, if I'm not going to count high school, so there was a show called Spring Awakening. It was a musical. It was it's based off a novel like in the 1800s in Germany, and it's like a coming of age story about these kids in Germany. Their parents give them very little sexual education basically, and they find out on their own like throughout the
reality
our world. For real, exactly. So I remember there's like a trend that happens. Like if someone does a show, there's like 3 other people doing a show like at the same time. And so one was already cast. I auditioned for one show Because I remember, like, I don't know if you watch Glee,
Yeah.
but Lea Michele was the original Broadway cast character of the one I was auditioning for.
Mhm.
And I was in chorus, so they were like, "Oh yeah, you kind of look like her," and I was like, "No, I don't," and like, because I just didn't want to look like anyone.
Yeah.
So I was like, "No, I don't." But then hearing that too, I was like, "Oh well, okay. Well, if I do, then let me audition." So I ended up auditioning. I didn't get that one. I didn't even get called back. And then one more I found out about, and I was like, okay, if it's meant to be, let's go for it. And I was really into manifesting at the time. So I would write down everything like I had it. I would say, like, I'm so honored to play Venla in Spring Awakening. And that's exactly what happened. The last one I went to, I booked it. And so I was the lead role. That was my first lead ever. And so it was a lot of content too to be your first lead ever.
That's awesome.
But it was like the best experience. And that was really the first, and this was right after high school.
Mhm.
So that was my first hands-on experience and being like, wow, I love this and I want to do this for the rest of my life. Like, that was my eye-opener.
Mhm. And you're still doing it to today.
Yeah,
That's so
yeah.
dope.
I have another. I didn't get all the promotional stuff I asked them for. I think they're still after SAG and everything, still trying to find out. But I do have an upcoming movie. It's called The Unbreakable Bunch. It's with like. So I don't know if you're into wrestling. I'm not really.
I am.
Yeah, you are. Do you know WC?
I love WWE.
But do you know WCW?
Yes, and
Okay.
there's another one too.
So a lot of these guys in this movie were from WCW. So I got to work with Haku. He was known as many different names, like Haku Tonga. He's this big Samoan wrestler, and he was the coolest. Like, I remember we were training for the movie because I did my own stunts in it.
I really gotta watch this.
Yeah, so as soon as I get the information, I'll definitely send it out. But yeah, he's just this big Samoan who's like, "Hey, little one." And I'm like, "Yes."
Because you're tiny.
I am. Yeah, I'm
What's your
like
height?
5'2". Like an Ariana Grande type, like, going on. And I'm just like, "Yes." And I remember one time we were having dinner and he was just the sweetest. Like, someone was talking to me and I was a little uncomfortable, but didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
And so he's like, "Little one, sit by me." And I
Like,
goes, okay. I go sit by him and he goes, "I saw you looked uncomfortable, so I just wanted to rescue you from your situation."
That's cute. Yeah.
And I was like, "Thank you so much." He goes, "Yeah, I have a lot of daughters and granddaughters, so like we always look out for our fam." And I was like,
That's cute.
"That's awesome."
That's cute. So with that one, do you know when it's gonna release?
I don't know. They're promoting it right now, but again, I think after the SAG strike, and we're still trying to figure out like how to move forward. Because it's great that we came to a decision, for
Right.
sure. It's just, it's all learning, basically. So I think it should. I don't know. It should be coming out sometime soon. I just don't know the exact dates when.
So with these, what is the one thing that you would love to do?
I want to be like an action star so bad. Like, if I was a Marvel superhero, like that's the dream and the goal.
So you said you manifested before. So have you manifested that?
In some way, in some ways, kind of this too, because I play an up and coming like young female wrestler in it. So
I have to see that. You
that's
don't
what I'm
understand
saying.
how
And it's
much
crazy. I have red
wrestling.
hair in it. I look so different, because they were going for like a patriotic theme. So they were like red and blue, and they were like, "Can you dye your hair red?" I was like, "Yeah, sure. Like, I'll do whatever."
I have to see this.
So yeah, so I have like short red hair, like totally different from what I look like right now.
Oh my God, that is so fun.
But it was fun because I got to do fight scenes with these wrestlers, and I'm like, they're so much bigger than me too.
Did you have to like practice before that?
Oh yeah,
or?
yeah, we definitely trained. So it's almost like dance. You get choreography, so you work on the choreography. And if there's like certain stunts or like tricks or falls or whatever, you practice that before then. It was cool because we even filmed in Sanford. So it was like downtown Sanford, just us at night, like having crash mats, being like, "All right, you're getting shot. All right, fall."
So did they
Like-
bring people in to help you guys practice the moves? Or
Yeah,
you guys-
so the one I did on Amazon Prime, he was our stunt coordinator. So he was also the stunt coordinator for this one too. In addition with some other ones too. And they're great. Like, I've always loved being around stunts because my mom put me in martial arts as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always like the one girl around a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
And especially I have 2 brothers too. So it was older and younger. So I was always like the token girl around guys, but like one of the bros kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that was like me as a kid. So it felt the same way with that. But it was
That
great.
is so cool.
It really was.
Now I want to do stunts. I want to do acting
You
classes.
can do whatever you want to put your mind to, honestly.
Like I said, I try to do everything at least one time. I did boxing for a while.
Boxing's fun.
I haven't gone back because I love my nails and they're long.
I know, that's why I was like, I never do mine because they always break when I'm doing something.
Yeah, so I can't stick them in the gloves right now, but I have to go back. But I love boxing.
It's fun.
And then I also did pole dancing.
I want to do that though.
We should
haven't.
do it.
Yeah, let's go.
It helped me with my upper body strength more.
Yeah.
So to help lift me, but I was in awe with myself that I was able to climb that pole and sit on the pole and do all of that.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean,
all right, that'll be next on my list.
Yeah, that had bruises all over the place, but
yeah.
I did it. I have to go back because it is a good workout. I said it again.
It's fine.
I love shooting. So I go to the shooting range. I do that. And I haven't done it in a little bit. I have to go back with him because my trainer goes different places. So I have to see if he's back in town.
Nice.
And then I've been trying to see what else. I did the book, which was one thing that I put out.
Yeah.
And then now I'm doing the podcast. So it's like, okay, what else is the next thing that I want to conquer? Because I've done, growing up, it's like so much of that fear and trying to stay away and be like, okay, I don't want to be in the spotlight. Now I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to be in the spotlight. I don't care.
Yeah.
So I'm trying different things.
I feel that, especially after my accident too. It was like a super wake up call to be like, you know what? This you only have now.
Right.
You can't keep wallowing in the past, or at least just like not in a bad way, but you know, like we all go through hardships in life. And I do believe it's okay, especially like for me being an actor, I think you should at least acknowledge your feelings, because so many people when they go through things, they just set it to the side and they let everything bottle up. And I do think it's very emotionally healthy just to feel what you're going through and not like, oh, I just have to get through it or whatever, because that's part of the human experience too. I like why am I forgetting her name? Betty from Riverdale. She was on this podcast with Jay Shetty, and she was like, yeah, sometimes when I'm feeling like, you know, whether it's depressed or kind of down, I just realize like, you know what, like I'm able to feel these emotions, and like some people can't, and some people aren't even here anymore. So like, what a blessing it is just to even go, like in a weird way, just to even go through it and
really
feel
understands it and know the right emotions, because for a very long time I didn't know that it was okay to cry about certain things because it was more of don't cry.
Yeah, and
like,
a lot of it's conditioning, like your parents, like suck it up, like whatever.
Right. Even when I was raised with the older brother, so that's why I like wrestling and all of that stuff. So when I got hurt, he didn't want me to cry because he didn't want my mom to come
find out.
Right. So it was just like laugh it off, laugh it off, laugh it off. So till today, when I do get hurt, I laugh. So in pain, I start laughing, and people are like confused, like, why are you laughing? Because I'm hurting.
It's crazy all the things you've conditioned to learn, and then you do it as an adult, and you're like, oh, wow, this still has stuck with me all these years. So it's pretty crazy.
It's like the confusion of the different emotions, just like when you're going through one of the podcasts I was going back and forth with, someone said, oh, it's shame on you for laughing at somebody else's trauma. And it wasn't that I was laughing at anybody else's trauma. It's just that that's how you're conditioned to react. Right. And I know the person that was my guest, so we were going back and forth, and we do laugh in our conversations.
Yeah.
When I start to see people feeling a little down, then I try to bring them back up with either a joke or whatever. And then I start laughing, because then I have that nervous tick.
And it's a nervous tick too. And like, some people, sometimes that is their reaction to laugh at things, because they don't know what to feel.
Right.
And so that kind of makes them feel better.
The feelings. You're just there. It's just all over the place. You don't know the correct feelings to express at the moment. And I think it's because of how you were conditioned.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
So, 100%. When I went through my divorce is when I sat and I said, stay still. Well, God told me you're gonna stay still because he made
Yeah.
my car break down and everything.
Yeah.
So it was in the dealer for like two weeks, and I'm like, you know what? Let me just stay here, not
Mm-hmm.
go anywhere, and just sit still. Just
Yeah.
sit still and feel all of the emotions. Whether it's okay for me to be angry, it's okay for me to cry, it's okay
Mm-hmm.
for me to do all of that. So I know you did go through an accident.
Yeah.
So did that take anything away from you in that moment? Did you feel those feelings?
Well, it was interesting because I was rear-ended, so it happened so quick,
Mm-hmm.
and you're still learning to bounce back from it. And I've never been really injured like that ever. I've been very thankful I've never broken bones, knock on wood.
Right.
Yeah, like I've always been pretty healthy, and so it really was a wake-up call because I love doing stunts, and I was like, I don't want that to take
To
it
affect
or
you.
yeah, to affect me and take that away from me. Granted, I'm going back to the gym, so I've been feeling myself getting stronger, like but yeah, it was scary because basically like my lower back, my shoulder, my neck, and the first 2 weeks I was just crying in bed because my pain was or like my head was in so much
Excruciating. Yeah.
pain. And I've never felt that in my life. And so, but it's interesting because I have been working on my own script, like a psychological thriller that I want to produce and star in it and write. So in a weird way, it was kind of like, well, now I know what it's like to have physical trauma and injury. So I
Yeah.
want to incorporate that in the film I was already writing anyway. Just about getting over trauma that, like, no matter what life throws at you, that ultimately you can bounce back from it, but you have to have the right mindset going into it, but also allow yourself those emotional when you do get in those lows or
Mm-hmm.
however you feel, so that you do feel it and don't just keep dismissing it off to the side and making things worse
Mm-hmm.
in the long run.
I think that's what a lot of people do, try to dismiss it, and
They
then
do,
they just
yeah.
like sweep it on the rug and then just keep
Mhm.
on moving, and then it just explodes somewhere else.
Yeah, and then it'll explode somewhere and you never know
Mm-hmm.
where, but it
And
will.
at the wrong time.
That's why I'm like, you know what? I don't care if I'm extra or emotional. Like, I'm gonna go through my stuff in my house so that when I'm out and about, I'm not like breaking down or
Right. I
wherever.
think too is like with me, it's just don't be so dramatic. That's why I tell myself, stop being
Yeah.
so dramatic. But I think it's because of my brother too. Stop being so dramatic.
Yeah,
You know,
boys.
so
Yeah, for
so
sure.
now it's like, okay, I push through a lot, but I do
Mhm.
feel at home by myself.
Yeah.
So I try, and I say after me writing my book and me healing
Yeah.
from a lot, I have become a baby cry. I cry more in front of
That's
people than I
okay.
used
Like,
to.
I want when I have kids, like, I want them, like, hey, are you upset about it? Cry through it. Like, don't wallow in it forever, but like, let yourself go through it. Cause I
Right.
do think it's emotionally healthy. And I do want to teach like things that I wish I would have known as a
Yeah.
kid that it's okay to do. And I just, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's feelings and emotions. It's just like, oh my God.
And I feel like as women, we have a lot of them.
Right, right.
So,
But you know what? I try to stay away from it and I just don't express it. Like
yeah.
my boyfriend will tell me, how do you feel? I don't know. I told him the other day, I love you. He was like, you do that?
What? What do you mean you do that?
Because he says, I'm not, he says that, well, people say I tend to be like very cold. I don't know what it is. I don't show affection or emotion or
Well,
those
you're
types of feelings.
Well, I would say growing up for me at least, like being in a Filipino household, it was just always implied, like,
You
love is
know I love
there.
you,
Yeah,
right? I don't need to
but
tell
yeah, I don't
you.
need to tell you.
Mhm.
So, but now I'm like, no, I do. I expect, like, I do like being affectionate or like receiving it and giving affection too.
Mhm.
But yeah. So growing up, a lot of it is conditioning, like, oh, well, you're shown not to show emotion, basically, or just kind of keep things to yourself.
Cuz I'm not an affectionate person, so I'm not a one to be on top of
Well,
you
like, I
or
mean, with my
kiss you.
boyfriend, I'll be like, yeah.
I'll hold his hands at home,
Yeah.
maybe yeah, but out in public, I'm tend to be by myself and just walking, and I have to be. I had to think about it and be like, okay, hold his hand, and not force
But that's
myself, but
okay
it's just naturally, it
too.
just doesn't come to me.
But that's
And
okay
it's
too.
like I tell them, well, I didn't grow up with my mom hugging me or saying I
Yeah,
love you or anything
exactly.
like that. So it's hard for that. When someone does try to hug me, it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, no, I feel that even like some of my girlfriends, they're very touchy and I'm a Capricorn too, so I'm like okay.
Yeah.
Like, it took me a while to get even like physically like, oh, okay, yeah. But again, it's conditioning, and everyone's different too. Like, just because someone shows affection one way or expresses themselves one way doesn't mean someone else who does it differently is any wrong or like bad for that.
Yeah. So,
So
when I
yeah,
say it, he'll
it's just
just look at me
learning.
like, he'll look at me like, are you okay?
Yeah.
I like,
Hmm.
stop. Yes, I said it, all right? Stop.
I
I'm not
know,
gonna
like,
say
you
it
know,
again.
okay, I'm not gonna say it again.
So with everything that has happened, and you say you're better from the accident and that
Yeah.
trauma and everything else.
Mhm.
I asked everybody that comes on the show, on the podcast, if they feel that they're successful right now.
I do. I do. It took me a long time to get there and feel like it, but I really do. Especially too, like with acting and performing in general, it's a hustle all the time. You're constantly auditioning for things. Sometimes you get called back. Sometimes you're like on hold, which means like they're interested and then they don't even get back to you. So there's a lot of things that are up in the air in that industry. So it is nice to have something kind of outside of it that I can control and still have a day-to-day life and still make a living. So I think it's actually in my Capricorn brain, it's nice to have something that is creative but also not, because I used to put, again, so much pressure on like I have to make it for my family, being first generation, I have to be successful. But I am just in my own way now. Like I always wanted to be a lead in a movie. I've done it. I've always wanted to do like an action film. It's coming out
Yeah.
soon. So, but yeah, in my 20s, my dad, my biological father, he sat me down at 13 when he got remarried and just basically told me that like his new family comes first. So that really affected me for a long time, like in my teenage to 20s. Like I was just looking for love because I just felt like, oh, well, if my dad can replace me, anyone can. So I had
Right.
this really bad relationships with like men and just the way I saw myself too. And it took, again, a lot of unlearning and therapy and just really diving into like what this is specifically and knowing no you are enough. And that was a very selfish thing of him to do because you're just a kid, and maybe he could have said in the
In a
right,
different
in a
way. Yeah.
different way or something, but it affected me for a long time. But I also came to that realization of you can't keep letting it be an excuse.
Right.
Like you have to work on you have to talk about it, you have to go to therapy, you have to go through these things, because again, if you don't, like
It's
it's
gonna
just
hold
gonna
you back from
it's
life,
gonna
and then you wouldn't have these leads and these action movies and all this stuff. Yeah.
exactly. And so, but also too, like sometimes some of the trauma and the hardships you go through make you tougher and make you stronger, like a diamond almost. So I really do feel like a lot of, yeah, that era in like my 20s, a lot of just um a lot of pressure and finding myself. And people say like you don't know who you are when you're like in your 20s and stuff. And I was like, but I do. And I'm like, no, you don't.
How old are you?
I'm 30.
You're 30.
Yeah. So I'll be 31 in December. Yeah.
I think they say 20s is the year that you make all of the mistakes.
Yeah,
30s
for
is where you're
sure.
fixing all of those mistakes.
And that's what I'm doing.
And the 40s is when you're just sitting back and enjoying. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's true because I've been on my own since I was 16, so I was very advanced.
Yeah, I see.
Although I lived with my family, certain family members, but I was still
Yeah.
taking care of
You're
myself.
still
But
taking care of yourself.
I was very advanced, so I don't know if that timeline really works for me. But after a divorce and being in your 40s, it's like it's a whole brand new person again. Like you're really
True.
you're finding yourself again. So it's awesome and amazing. So
yeah, and I had a professor in college that I reconnected with like a couple years back, and he was like, yeah, like I was different in my 30s, I'm different in my 40s, but there's something exciting about that because you can always decide who you want to be.
Yeah.
It's not based off your
It's
past. Like it's
fun.
it's whoever you want to be. And that's what I love about acting and performing and creative. You can be anything you want to be. You can be yourself, you can be an alien, you can be whatever.
You
like,
see, you sold me. You sold me right there. We're doing this. I want to go to acting classes.
Or at least like something.
Yeah.
I highly do recommend to everyone because it just gets you out of your comfort zone. Especially if you're bad with like public speaking or maybe you're just not as comfortable around like big crowds. it really does get you out of your comfort zone, and you just have fun in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're coming short.
Mm-hmm.
All the time I sit here and talk with everyone, and I think I said it several times. It's like the time goes by very
It
quickly,
does.
very quickly. And then when I play these back, and when they send me the edits, and I sit there and watch them, I'm like, I don't remember talking about that. Oh my god, that's really good.
Sometimes that happens even performing. Like I recently did a show and that was very therapeutic. It was about the Disney princesses, but it was a comedy, which was
Okay.
funny. And it was actually written by people from Orlando. And it went off Broadway and everything. And so I played Pocahontas because on my dad's side I am also Native American.
Okay.
Yeah. And so she was interesting to play because one, she's a real person, and two, Disney butchered her story. It was not what, because you're playing this character, so you're like, okay, well, I have to do my research because it was a real person, but also a Disney character as well. So even just because, pretty much I got in the accident, got rear-ended, and then 3-4 weeks later we opened the show, so it was a quick turnaround. But thankfully I only had like a couple songs. Like I'd sing, go off stage, sit, sing, dance, go off stage, sit. But it was very therapeutic because I had a slur in my speech. But learning songs and dialogue that you really had to work on and work your diction, it helped me get my speech back, honestly. That and singing and learning. I dance as well, so I'm very good at like picking up choreography. So just getting back into things that you're familiar with really helped, I think, with my recovery, just even naturally. Because I like sometimes I do pause a little bit, but I did have like a slur in my speech like after the accident, and so it was just a lot of, okay, what is my body like now, and
what is it telling me?
learning from it, and also, okay, don't do this now, like your lower back doesn't like when you bend over like that, don't do that.
Oh, you're 30. When you get to your 40s, you're gonna start feeling like your body parts are in their 70s.
Well, that's why I'm training now to be like, all right, like,
and I'm
let's
physical.
go.
I lift weights, so I'm very strong.
Yeah,
but I used to love running, and now my knee just tends to be like, no, you're not running today.
I don't know. I'll do like short sprints, but no, not for me.
So we're coming short, like I said. So I may have to bring you back on. We'll see.
Yeah,
if you're doing all of these movies, you probably wouldn't be able to. But is there something that you want, a message that you want to portray, or let people know where they can find you if they want to see you in anything that you're doing?
Yeah, for sure. So on social media, I'm MK Combat, so MKAY, like my last name, and then Combat with a K. I play into the whole Melina Mortal Kombat. Melina is my name, so I feel like my mom conditioned me pretty much to be like
Mortal Kombat.
Pretty much. But yeah, you can find me on there. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Again, Amazon Prime, Unsheltered, the movie. I mean, it says Melina Kay on there, so that's the one when you find it. And then as soon as I get more information about the Unbreakable Bunch,
Pass it along.
Yeah,
definitely.
for sure.
I'll put it on my social media so people can see it.
Definitely, because it'll be fun.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having
I really
me.
appreciate it. And thank you guys for tuning in and watching. Please, please, please like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel and any other podcast platforms. I'm really looking at the reviews too, so if you can drop a review so that it can help me and figure out who's going to come on next. But thank you.